heart of where innovation, money, and power collide in Silicon Valley and beyond. This is Bloomberg Technology with Caroline Hyde and Ed Ludlow.
I'm Caroline Hyde at Bloomberg's World Headquarters in New York.
And I'm Ed Ludlow in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg Technology.
Coming up, full coverage on Tesla's release of the Cybertruck. After years of development delays and manufacturing snags, we'll bring you the details on the long-awaited and rather expensive electric vehicle.
And OpenAI is sticking with a plan to let employees sell shares in the company through a tender offer. We'll have more on the company's plans amid the tumult over Altman.
Plus, X CEO Linda Yaccarino is backing her boss after his insults to brands backing away from the platform. We'll bring you the memo to staff and so much more throughout this hour. Let's look at what's happening in the markets because first day of the new month and we're imagining up 0.2%. Nothing to be sniffed at. Certainly nowhere near the 10% rally that we saw throughout the month of November, one of the best months that we've had in at least a year since the summer of 2022. Two-year yield, though, the fact that we've got bonds and stocks rallying at the same time. Fed Jay Powell, of course, speaking out, talking about AI in particular, how everyone's trying to fathom it, but also, of course, the leader of the Federal Reserve is also largely talking about how they're on pace potentially just to be equal balanced in terms of where the inflationary pressures are going. So everyone anticipating that we're on hold for the rest of this year and maybe we see rate cuts as soon as the second half of next year. Bloomberg dollar index therefore falls on the back of this too. We're off by 0.3%. Let's have a look at what is rallying though. And I'm looking at what's happening in the world of crypto. Up 3% on the day, 38,830 about is where we're trading, but 1 point eclipsing what has been a 19-month high. So if you have to go all the way back to summer of 2022 when you last saw these sorts of levels of 38,000, some now, Ed, calling for that $40,000 level to be eclipsed by the end of the year. But what have you got on the micro?
Well, our top story, and that is Tesla finally launching the Cybertruck. Shares down 1% and off session lows. The news is the pricing, really. We get three variants of the Cybertruck, and these are the details of what it looks like. A rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, and then I can't believe it's called this, Cyber Beast version. And I guess that the main takeaway, if we start with the rear-wheel drive, is just the case study at the low end. The price is about 50% above what Tesla marketed it at in 2019 when they first unveiled it. I was there in Hawthorne. You'll remember on stage, the glass smash window, $60,990 before incentives, before gas savings, 250 miles of range. But here's the kicker. This low-end variant is not available until 2025. The two higher-end available next year, 2024. We've got a really fantastic guest joining us right now. Sandy Munro is the CEO of Munro & Associates, also known as the Teardown Titan. And Sandy, you have been on the ground in Austin for the last 3 days. You've been driving Cybertruck. Yeah. You've been in the factory. You've been speaking to executives. Let's start with the price points. What's the conclusion that you draw on the pricing that Tesla released?
Well, I got a chance to drive the Beast, and that was the vehicle that they gave me to fool around with. It definitely, it's wicked fast. It's unbelievably comfortable. I would put it in with other $100,000 vehicles. Now, I don't know the other two products at all because I didn't really get a chance to test those. But the one that I had, the Cybertruck Beast, definitely is quick. That'll scare the daylights out of most people. And if you've got it, there's a video of the Cybertruck and a Porsche 911 taking off from the line and doing a quarter mile. And the Tesla wins, but it's towing another 911. It beat the 911 towing a 911. It's fast. It's extremely fast. It's very.
Hey, Sandy. Yeah. Sandy, I called you at the top of the show, the Teardown Titan. I just want to explain to our audience, you're principally an automotive engineer, right? And you kind of rose to prominence because you take new vehicles, tear them apart right down to the individual nuts and bolts, and assess what they're made of, assess their efficiency. You have been in the factory, and I wanted to ask you, based on the design of this vehicle and what you saw down in Austin Giga, how many do you think they're going to be able to build initially this year or the remainder of this year, next year?
That's kind of a tough question because there's a lot that determines whether or not you're going to be able to push out those products. A lot of it has to do with the supply chain, and there's a lot of things that kind of push you in different directions as far as launch is concerned. What I saw was running at 60 jumps per hour, and that's kind of normal. The rest of the factories that I've seen, the rest of the Tesla factories are running at 42, 43 seconds per cycle or per station. That's fast. That's really fast. So if they could keep that momentum up, in 12 months, they should be able to do easily 250. It depends on how many, how many shifts you've got and whatnot, but they should easily be able to do 250,000 a year at that rate, 250 to 500,000, depending on how many shifts.
Yeah, and certainly Musk saying that 250,000 units possible by 2025. I'm interested, Sandy, in ultimately, how does this disrupt the pickup truck market at large? You keep on showing the sort of F-150, in particular, the EV competitor there, and how the price point is a lot cheaper there, even though Elon Musk himself said, look, it looked expensive at the time. How do you think it compares to the rest of the market?
Well, everybody's been trying to say that they're all pickup trucks, but really and truly, there's a distinct user difference between the Rivian, the Lightning, the Cybertruck, and say something like the Hummer. They're not really tuned to attack the same market. They all can do pickup truck kind of work, but I think that the average person who's got a construction company is probably going to be going for a Lightning. The guy who wants to go to the grocery store and every once in a while pick up a 2x4, that's probably the Rivian kind of story. The Hummer, I don't know who that is, but I can tell you, for me, I'm going to be brutally frank here. I'm trying to get a hold of two of them, and one is going to be my drive, because for me, if you're an outdoorsman, you got quads, you got hunting on your mind, hunting or fishing or whatever. This is the truck for you. This is what I'm truly looking for. I have a Lightning at the office. My wife owns a Rivian. Like I say, I don't know an awful lot about. GM has never offered me one of their Hummers for driving, but for me, what I want is I want a Cybertruck.
Okay, you want it, Sandy. What is any criticism then? What is it that might be a slight worry when you go and take that pickup?
Yeah, I drove it for a few hours, and the only time that I had a problem with the thing was when I had to try and, where the heck am I?
We can still hear you, don't worry, leave it.
Okay, you're good, Sandy, keep going.
Yeah, so anyways, the only thing that I had that was an issue was when I was going up and I took it into a parking garage, and that scared the living lights out of me, because it's a very big vehicle, and it was very difficult for me to determine where the corners of the car are, and I really didn't want to smash Tesla's car. So I made the suggestion to the guys, and I said, hey, you know what? Really and truly, I can't see out of the I can't see where the corners are. How about you put up utilize the cameras at the front of the vehicle and make it so I can see where the corners are with relationship to the walls of the what do you call it, parking garage that I was going up.
Right.
And I said, oh, no problem, just a software thing. Well, we can probably make that as a running change. That was the only thing that Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Sandy. I want to make sure we get to this. I guess you haven't had a chance yet to do a teardown of the Cybertruck for obvious reasons.
No.
I guess, will you do a teardown? But also, I think the materials here are so important. This is your expertise, right? The reinforced steel, the 48-volt architecture, the wire driving, all of these things. What's your assessment of that design and material?
Drive-by-wire is long. I'm going to do that one first, because that is the thing that is the biggest differentiator. Drive-by-wire, I wouldn't really want to do that unless it was 48-volt system. Going from 12 to 48 volts is huge. I mean, a gigantic advantage. The system that they've got is double and triple redundancy. So all those naysayers in Washington, the initiative folks, even they had to kind of like nod their head and say, okay. The fact that you've got both front steering and rear steering, you got 10 degrees of rear steering, means that you can spin this thing around like a top. It's really, really, really easy to drive, especially in parking lot or tight corner type of applications. It's spectacular in that respect.
Yes.
The maneuverability is wonderful. The fact that I've got the ability now to have lock-to-lock at 320 degrees means that I never have to take my hands off the steering wheel. It's basically 320 degrees. You're never going in a complete circle. So that makes the steering wheel a thing of the past, and everybody's going to be going to a yoke now.
Sandy, there's a specific, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Sandy, there's a specific material we have to get to. So Elon Musk is talking about how the windows, because Elon Musk is talking about how bulletproof it is, and he demoed firing a machine gun at it, and Joe Rogan with a steelhead arrow at it.
Right.
It makes dents, it's bulletproof. But what about the glass, right? I saw Franz do a demo of the window. It didn't smash this time.
Baseball. No, but it was a baseball.
What did they tell you about?
Not a shot.
Well,
put.
exactly.
Yeah.
I made that observation on X because last time it was a metal ball bearing. This time it was a baseball. But here's my point and my question to conclude. What did they tell you there on site that they failed to mention during the presentation? Because they didn't talk about the range extender during the presentation, and they didn't confirm if the glass is bulletproof too.
Okay, so the glass being bulletproof, the glass that's in the normal vehicle, I'm pretty sure is going to be a good tempered glass, and yeah, you could throw rocks or snowballs or something like that at it, but an iron ball or a bullet, not so much. The thing is, though, you can buy glass that is bulletproof, and you can put it in. It adds an awful lot of extra weight and a huge amount of cost. Let's get back to the steel. The stainless steel that they're using is a 300 series stainless steel. For those folks that are into technology, it's austenitic, and which means that it's non-magnetic, and it's quite a bit tougher, and everything does break down eventually, but they would be classified as a true stainless steel. The thing that makes it even more impressive or important is that when they cold form it, they move it from austenite to martensite. That probably doesn't mean anything to most people, but if you know anything about material science, a martensitic structure means that you're moving into something that's really hard.
Yeah.
So normal steel is not even measured on a Rockwell C scale, but the body structure, the body panels, the reason that they can contain bullets of multiple calibers and right. Quite frankly, multiple velocities, the reason that it can do that is because it's martensitic. And martensite is pretty dramatic. You can't believe how tough that is.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like what's happening. So the steel comes in relatively strong. Then it goes through cold forming, which basically strengthens it even more. Then it goes into one more little, like the air bending and whatnot that they do for some of those linear lines, like you're showing it right now.
Yeah.
You've got that line that goes straight across the vehicle. That is absolutely something that makes it a whole lot stronger. So anytime you can put a bend or a wrinkle in a piece of sheet metal, that's great. I had no idea how they were doing that, but I did have a chance to look at the assembly line. I saw the machines that are manufacturing. It's a Trump machine. It's actually, I mean, it's quite simple. A lot simpler than I thought. So yeah, it's really well engineered. And then
Sandy.
Of course, yeah, the aluminums for the castings and whatnot. Also, again, they created their own material science. It flows incredibly well.
Sandy.
We're
gonna have to leave it there, Sally, but I cannot tell you how much you are preaching to the right choir here in terms of the intricacies of the material science, the technology that really goes into these cars and these pickups. Sandy Munro, we thank you, CEO of Munro and Associates. OpenAI's tender offer, it's on. And it could value the AI company at $86 billion. OpenAI is sticking with its plan to let employees sell shares and giving them actually a bit of extra time, a month, in fact, to decide whether to take part in it. Let's bring in Bloomberg's Max Chafkin for more, because this was the ongoing question, wasn't it? After all of the turmoil, would ultimately be the demand? And clearly there is enough demand.
Right. Well, and during the upheaval, there was this big question of, is this company valuable anymore? Is this company even really a company? Now we've seen, reinstitution of Sam Altman and Greg Brockman, the president, this newly reconstituted board. Clearly, Microsoft is on board with this whole business. They're going to have an observer seat on the new board. And yes, and the tender offer is moving forward, which will be really great, obviously, for employees. I mean, it's going to be primarily a way for people who own shares to cash out, which is going to mean employees, but is also, of course, a sign of healthiness for the company overall.
We're just showing the makeup of the new transitional board. And just to note to our audience, Larry Summers is a paid contributor to Bloomberg's Wall Street Week. For me, this story does put the spotlight on Microsoft, right? Partly because all the staff were going to defect to Microsoft had Sam Altman not come back. But the non-voting observer seat, when I posted that we'd broken that story, Max, everyone asked me, what does that even mean? And remember, Satya Nadella said surprises are bad.
Well, okay. I mean, a non-voting board seat doesn't mean much. I guess in theory, what it means is what happened the last time would not happen again, in the sense that they wouldn't be as surprised as they were. So Microsoft had only a couple of minutes of notice when Sam Altman was fired the last time. So this time, one assumes they would have a little bit more notice. Beyond that, I think it's more of a signal of Microsoft's position with respect to OpenAI. They have a little bit more leverage now. So the old board included a couple of board members who I would say were not as aligned with Microsoft's interests. This new board, I'd say, is more pro-Microsoft, more in the Satya Nadella camp, and the board seat reflects that, or the board observer seat.
Yeah, many people were trying to sort of say capitalism won. Well, ultimately, maybe capitalism was always winning, but we've got more of a focus perhaps on profit over safety, dare I say it. Not that that's going to be in any way perhaps completely backseat. We still got to see what the rest of the board looks like, because at the moment they've noted this is undiverse. Brett Taylor's been trying to talk about that. That needs expanding, and so too does ultimately the recovery process need to be borne out vis-a-vis the competition.
Well, and here's the thing. We still don't know if there are going to be huge differences. We still have many of the same things that led to the last craziness, right? Nonprofit, ostensibly a board that's supposed to still be focused on safety, supposed to still be willing to, shut this thing down if it ever gets too out of hand. And still you have Microsoft, which has this huge interest in the company, more than $10 billion worth of money, its entire corporate strategy depending on this third party that it doesn't control. So in a lot of ways, we're back where we were before, which for Microsoft is going to be fine. They were doing well with this relationship, but there is still a lot of uncertainty.
And an investigation, Ed.
Yeah, and an investigation into what originally happened, led by an independent party. Check out Max Chafkin's Bloomberg Business Week story. Microsoft's lack of control over OpenAI remains a wild card. Now, coming up on the show, ouch. Tiger Global's biggest venture fund racking up an 18% paper loss at the end of September. We're going to bring you those details coming up next. This is Bloomberg Technology. All right, time for Talking Tech. And first up, Apple and Paramount are reportedly in talks to bundle their streaming services at a discounted rate. The Wall Street Journal says discussions are in the early stages and some operational details are still unclear. More companies have been resorting to bundling packages to make their offerings more affordable and attractive. And Meta says there's no harm done by making its artificial intelligence technology widely available. Meta's chief AI scientist, Yann LeCun, touted the importance of sharing tech, while other companies might be more protective. He spoke about advancing AI at a faster rate, saying, quote, "If you do this in secret, you will fall behind." Plus, X CEO Linda Yaccarino sent a memo to employees showing her support of owner Elon Musk after his comments this week, which insulted brands that have backed away from advertising on the platform. She called Musk candid and profound and added, quote, "No matter how hard they try, we will not be distracted by sideline critics who don't understand our core mission." Caro.
We're going to be discussing that much more a little bit later in the show. But for now, Ed, we want to dwell on the fact that while stocks have rallied, Bonds have rallied in the month of November. Not all has been that pretty for some big venture bets of late. Just take Tiger Global Management's biggest venture fund. Get this, it racked up 18% loss at the end of September. That's after slashing valuations for some of the key companies in its portfolio. Bloomberg actually learning that the fund marked down firms ranging from an AI-powered email company to a privacy search engine, of course, DuckDuckGo, but most notably, some of their crypto bets absolutely decimated in terms of original valuation. Of course, Tiger Global did not comment for this story, but we do get some more context from Bloomberg News Wall Street reporter Sonali Basak. And I mean, for me, what took my breath away was the Bored Ape Yacht Club and OpenAI. I mean, 90% marked down from an original valuation? I mean, that kind of speaks of hubris.
And you remember Bored Ape Yacht Club bought in other big investors like R.A. Berghoff's Liontree, and you have Philippe Lafon's Co2 coming into OpenAI as well. There was a time that OpenAI was an IPO darling. If you remember, they had hired the former CFO of Lyft, who then had left OpenAI subsequently and now is working at Splunk, I believe. But remember, OpenAI had been caught in the crosshairs here of the regulatory uncertainties that would surround the rest of the investment industry in crypto, but even more so because NFTs versus token listings and other types of assets were under the ire of the SEC. So yes, a severe write-down when you look at how Tiger Global has taken this position. You've seen similar at rivals, but as you say, this has not been limited to the crypto industry for these big investment firms.
Sonali, 30 seconds, but a big scoop on Binance VIP traders getting a heads up on recent proceedings.
They did know ahead of time, and of course, because we know that CZ was in the UAE and they don't have an extradition treaty with the United States, that it was not just about the founder here. This showed you the extent to which the rest of the traders were concerned about how Binance would dissolve the settlement and be able to get through it at the end of the day, which of course they have been.
Crypto's her sweet spot. Welcome back to Bloomberg Technology. I'm Caroline Hyde in New York.
And I'm Ed Ludlow in San Francisco. Look, Cara, I don't want to put a downer on things, but final day of the week, and this is what markets look like on a weekly basis. NASDAQ 100, okay, it's basically flat, actually, 0.02% on the week, but I guess we are headed potentially halfway through the trading day through a down week. There's been a bunch of Fed speak out there. Earnings are having a real impact on the trajectory of the NASDAQ 100 in the last 24, 48 hours, which of course is made up of some of those higher multiple software names that have reported earnings. Dell also a big impact on markets this Friday. An important piece of news that I want to bring our audience, look at some of the EV makers, including the legacy automakers transitioning to EV. The Biden administration has set the limits for a foreign entity of concern. Basically, the rule is that if a company involved in the battery supply chain has more than 25% foreign ownership in the context of China, then any car that includes a component or a material tied to that company, an FEOC, will not be eligible for the $7,500 federal tax credit. Really important when you consider the supply chains of all of these US automakers who are sourcing not just the battery packing component, but the raw materials with some association with Chinese companies.
And actually, this really dovetails into ultimately the conversations that are going on in the Middle East at the moment, because, well, world leaders have kicked off the COP28 climate summit, and it's over in the UAE, Dubai in particular, with pledges to boost investment in green solutions and calls for more decisive action to cut greenhouse gases. Let's just get the latest on the ground.
Day 2 of COP28 started with an early win for developing nations. An agreement was reached for a loss and damage fund designed to help vulnerable countries deal with more extreme weather stoked by global warming. A number of leaders from King Charles to President Narendra Modi and President Da Silva and also UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres addressed the plenary, delivering an urgent message on fighting climate change.
The climate challenge is not just another issue in your inbox. Protecting our climate is the world's greatest test of leadership.
Other key areas we're still watching out for on the agenda are potentially an agreement to expand renewable investment and potentially a plan to phase out fossil fuels. Jennifer Zabasaja from COP28, Bloomberg News, Dubai.
Bloomberg's Jennifer Zabasaja there reporting on the ground. Ed, what have you got?
Well, let's stick with the COP28 Climate Summit, the discussion, and bring in a venture capitalist who's investing in that space. Joining us now is Andrew Beebe, Managing Director at Obvious Ventures. And Obvious Ventures, a VC firm that invests exclusively in startups addressing climate, health, and finances. I always ask this question. In the Middle East, there is a really important meeting of world leaders going on and business leaders. And at the other end of the chain, you're investing. How much attention do you pay to what's going on in Dubai right now?
Yeah, I think all eyes are on Dubai right now, for sure. They're trying to solve the biggest challenge of our generation, climate change. And when we try to tie it together, what I'm focused on is watching how many founders are headed over this year. That's very different than in the past. We're seeing entrepreneurs from around the world deciding this is the place to be right now, and that's exciting.
I moderated a panel at Techonomy Climate right at the start of the year, and we were considering a lot of these big picture items, and the panel was split on whether you go for a startup whose future is dependent on public subsidy, policy, but also government money paving the way for their future. How do you approach that?
We look at those as tailwinds. We try to find companies that are going to build the future we all existed in the world. We do that in fintech. We do that in healthcare. We do it a lot in climate. But when we think about subsidies, whether it's in healthcare or whether it's in climate, those are add-ons. We don't rely on them as the sole business model.
Of course, there's much hand-wringing at the moment, Andrew, about ultimately what events such as COP28 can ultimately achieve in terms of agreement and indeed policy, but then in terms of incentivizing corporate America at that. How are you seeing companies still marching towards a focus on climate change, even though perhaps the political environment has changed somewhat on it?
Look, we've been doing this a long time. I was an entrepreneur in the solar space in 2002. Climate change was like a thermostat setting at that point, right? We've come a long, long way. We've seen 2 orders of magnitude cost reductions in solar and wind, and these are now the cheapest solutions out there. So not only are we seeing corporations show up looking for solutions, and I think showing up in mass in Dubai looking for solutions and asking each other, almost Davos-like, trying to find the answer, trying to solve the puzzle, but we see founders in Silicon Valley and around the world showing up with incredible ideas to help transform our global economy.
Let's dig into those ideas, because you're someone who's led change at big business. I think how you were leading distributed generation over at the largest clean energy developer here in America. But when you're looking at the startups, Andrew, where is the innovation coming? What problems are we not seeing that are able to be fixed?
Silicon Valley spent the last 20 years digitizing the global economy. Now we're going to decarbonize it. And I think we're sort of in early innings, even though it's been about a decade of huge growth. I think McKinsey and Goldman are talking about $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion of new investment every year just to decarbonize the energy sector. And we feel that well underway. Solar and wind are now much more cost effective than coal and natural gas in most of the world for new generation. You guys have had a lot of discussion already this morning on electric vehicles, and we're seeing that transformation really start to take hold. Those are areas that we're very excited about. I would just mention 3 things. Mobility. We love the electrification of everything. There's a lot more to do to electrify every form of transportation around the world. We're very interested in scale, finding ways that we can get past all of the bottlenecks, particularly on the electricity grid. There's a lot of startup work going on in software and hardware to blow past a lot of the bottlenecks that we're facing. And then, of course, AI. AI and climate, there's a really exciting intersection.
Let me jump in here. We discussed a generative AI tool, or at least the underpinnings of a large language model, as an accelerant in the healthcare or biotech space. The use cases are obvious. Less obvious is how AI actually accelerates climate tech, makes it come to market quicker or otherwise.
That's right. I mean, we've been early on in using AI in different fields. We were early in Recursion Pharmaceuticals, and they did that in the healthcare space. I think you're going to see a lot of companies show up in climate with some similar ideas. There'll be deep tech concepts, how we use AI to help, and generative AI to help us think through things like battery chemistry. But I also think there's a lot in the information sector that will be very exciting, crossing AI and all of the things like Bloomberg New Energy Finance and Bloomberg Green There will be AI attached to that because big companies are looking to AI for solutions. And we're not ready yet, but we will have some announcements soon about an investment in that space.
And when you have those announcements, you know where to find us here at Bloomberg Technology. Come back. Andrew Beebe of Obvious Ventures, thank you so much for your time. Now, sticking with technology that addresses climate and climate change, a cutting-edge AI named Athena has been enlisted in the battle against bushfires in Australia as it braces for an escalating fire hazard this summer. Have a listen to this.
It went down in history as Australia's Black Summer, a 19-week period in late 2019 and early 2020 when 24 million hectares of the country burned. That's an area half the size of California or the entire United Kingdom. The smoke circled the globe. Now the stage is set for a possible repeat. This map from the National Council for Fire and Emergency Services showing large areas of Australia facing increased fire risk. Bloomberg Economics is forecasting property and casualty insurance costs in Australia to the year ending June 2024 could be well above the 10-year average of $3 billion.
So this fire season we've seen a significant drying out of the landscape following 3 years of above average rainfall. That's particularly that above average rainfall has promoted grass growth and obviously increase in fuel. And then we've started to see really dry spring, winter then into spring. So we're seeing an elevated risk.
To help combat that risk, the fire service has commissioned Athena, a world-first firefighting AI. Athena analyses data from weather forecasts, wind direction, terrain structures, populated areas, and even social media feeds to predict the fire's next move and what's at risk.
It takes a map of those fires and it then predicts what they'll do over 2 hours, 4 hours, 12 hours, and it will also tell us what structures or assets will come into threat. We can have more than 100 fires burning at any one time, and this stops us potentially making any mistakes or missing something.
Athena's modelling is also supported by data provided by the Pyrotron, a bushfire simulator built after Black Summer by government research body, the CSIRO. The fire service has also added Australia's largest firefighting helicopter for the coming summer, hoping history doesn't repeat, but ready in case it does. Paul Allen, Bloomberg, Sydney.
Now, coming up, more on AI, but ChatGPT's version. It was made, of course, accessible to the general public a year and a day ago, and the AI craze, it hasn't phased out since. We're going to discuss all of that next. This is Bloomberg Technology. Time now for our VC roundup, and Louis Bacon's More Capital Management and the publisher of the British tabloid The Daily Mail, well, they're launching a new venture fund called Renown Capital Partners, that's according to sources. The fund will invest in early and growth stage private companies focused on the world's transition to clean energy. Plus, Pakistan is launching a VC fund for local early stage startups in an effort to lure global investors back. Now, the government said the fund is aiming to allocate as much as $10 million annually. And the Biden administration has forced Prosperity 7, now that's Saudi Aramco's VC firm, to sell its shares in an AI startup, Rain AI. That's, of course, backed by OpenAI co-founder Sam Altman. This exit, it could have broader implications, really, for Saudi Arabia's growing investments in US technology amid its close ties with China. Ed, what have you got on AI?
Well, a lot more to talk about. And look, Sam Altman, 1 year of ChatGPT being released. OpenAI, as you said, Kara, released ChatGPT to the public a year and a day ago. The AI craze has not stopped. Millions of people, intellectual capital, real capital, money has poured into this industry from all over the world in a 12-month span. Let's keep the conversation going and bring in Dan O'Connell, who's Chief Artificial Intelligence and Strategy Officer for Dialpad, AI unicorn valued at $2.2 billion, backed by Andreessen Horowitz, Google Ventures, and Iconic. I know that you guys would say we were in AI earlier than that. We're an AI company in our own right, but I just ask you to reflect on the last 12 months, even if it's through the lens of your own AI company based on what OpenAI has done.
Yeah, I think what has happened over the past 12 months is a democratization of AI, where I think everybody on the planet suddenly sees the opportunity that AI can bring and across pretty much every piece of software in every industry that's there. So I think the hype is real, and we're going to see this proliferate over the next couple of years.
Caroline and I always want to approach this from a technology perspective. You have built your own foundation model, LLM. You call it Dialpad GPT. You did that yourselves, but there's always a choice. Go to OpenAI or another open source platform. Why do it yourself?
Yeah, fortunately, we have been in AI for a number of years. Dialpad acquired my business, which was one of the first real-time speech recognition engines called TalkIQ in 2018. So fortunately, at that time, we sat on this proprietary data set. We had a team that knew about these technologies and how to leverage them. And it became really evident for us that, look, we don't want to have, when we talk about AI, we don't want to be a wrapper around a third-party API. We want to control our innovation. We want to control the price and the scalability and the accessibility of that. And so I think AI is a fundamental differentiation in the market, and we want to own that piece ourselves because we believe that we can provide a better and enhanced experience to every one of our customers.
And I think a lot of the wrapper companies have perhaps realized the reasoning behind that of late, Dan. But what about the competition? How much more fast and furious has it become for you in the last 12 months?
Absolutely. I think it's a talent war right now out there in terms of finding people that know how to leverage these technologies. When you talk about AI experts that understand natural language processing and speech recognition and large language models, there's probably thousands of them. And that's going to obviously proliferate and step over the course of the next couple of years. But very much so, the worry that is out there is, look, do these large language models available as an API suddenly make AI easy for everybody? And I don't think that's the case. I think these large language models are good at some very horizontal use cases, but I think what you'll see play out over the course of this next year is proprietary large language models that are going to be industry specific and use case specific, much of what we've done, similar to our approach at Dialpad.
What about big corporates' desire to actually build themselves too, and the fact that we now have open source and closed source offerings? Have you been impressed by the fact that certain CTOs are wanting to do themselves? How have you found that sales discussion with some of the companies that you work with?
Yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong approach at this moment in time. Fortunately for Dialpad, we had a team of experts and a proprietary data set and the know-how to do this. And I think, some startups are going to approach a foundational model today through OpenAI or Anthropic or Inflection or Google Vertex. And I think the question is going to be whether those foundational models are going to provide use case specific or industry.
Well, and the business as well, right? You started your career at Google 2003. Everyone that I speak to, in ad sales, everyone I speak to at that time was like, well, we were kicking around the hacky sack and chatting about AI in a bigger picture way. Are we now going to make money from this venture?
Yeah. And I think the case is, like, when you're talking about the biggest opportunity is, I think, in contact center and sales organizations to say, look, we can provide the ability to instantly infer customer satisfaction from any conversation, never send out a survey. We can guide people through conversations. We can automate the note-taking into a system of record. And those are things that every business on the planet in sales and support struggles with.
Dan O'Connell, we thank you for some of those insights. And looking back on the past 12 months, looking forward to Chief Artificial Intelligence and Strategy Officer over at Dialpad.
Okay, some news that crossed the Bloomberg in the last hour. Walmart says that it isn't advertising on X. That's according to a Reuters report in which they cite a spokesperson who says Walmart has found better use of other platforms to reach their customers. It comes the day after Linda Yaccarino sent a memo to staff backing Elon Musk on his expletive-laden message to advertisers. Let's bring in Bloomberg's tech editor, Sarah Fryer. Together, we reported on this memo. What are the big takeaways?
Well, basically, Linda Yaccarino is trying to spin the Elon Musk appearance at DealBook in which he told advertisers to go F themselves if they don't want to spend money on X, and that if the company fails, it will be their fault. And Yaccarino speaks to staff calling this appearance at the conference candid and profound. She said, "Our principles do not have a price tag." So essentially, she is backing Musk and saying, "Okay, yeah, advertisers, if you don't like the way we work, go spend your money somewhere else." And Walmart here is saying, "Sure, we'll do that." I mean, the thing you have to remember here is that Twitter ads are not really as effective for many businesses as ads on Meta and ads on Google because the targeting is just not as specific. They work really well for events. They work really well for, say if there's the Super Bowl, you have all the attention here for big brands. So for a company like Walmart, you could see some effectiveness potentially. But when you get down to that specific micro-targeting that other companies are able to do, it's kind of easy to knock Twitter out of your budget and decide to go elsewhere, which is why it's more, I guess, risky for somebody like Linda Yaccarino to come out and say, to dare them essentially to take their money away.
Certainly not afraid of making her own role that much harder, it seems. Sarah Fryer, we thank you so much for breaking that down on the memo that, in fact, one Ed Ludlow had written up. Meanwhile, Ed, I mean, from concerns about X and perhaps a lot of that surrounding misinformation on the platform, we're going to talk now about some blurred lines for billions of people when they're seeking facts when it comes to AI images. They're flooding the web right now, and it's proving pretty key for Google, isn't it? Look, Bloomberg opinion writers, Palmi Olson, Elaine Hay, they've created this quiz on the Bloomberg terminal using real and AI photos to just show how hard it is to distinguish the currently. I mean, look at them at the moment. Which one?
Well, hold on. Let's try it out.
Yeah.
Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. A is definitely the legit one. A.
I'd say that one, yeah. I'd say A.
Boom. Next.
Oh, I mean, Maya Angelou.
I haven't got a clue.
Had a read at a wedding. I'm going to say B is the real one there.
And one of them is AI generated.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Okay,
fair.
This one's harder. Joan of Arc. Now, to be honest, I
wasn't around at the time.
As you are.
Yeah, I wasn't around at the time of Joan of Arc. And they're both painting. I would go with A. Let's go with A.
Okay. Are you right? Oh, look, we're cleaning up on this one. And now, okay, Napoleon Bonaparte. I'm going to go B.
Sure, B.
Wah, wah. We got it wrong. Okay, there's our first dud. This one, I think, is kind of
hard.
Obvious. I think it's obvious. I think it's
okay,
A.
go
What
ahead.
do you
Go
think?
ahead. I think it's B.
Oh,
but
I would be right. But actually, that's quite a good one as to ultimately whether you think that one's AI or not.
B is clearly high definition. Let's make this the final.
It's a
final
British one. Come on, we can do this.
It's hard. B?
Oh, I think that might be right, Ed. At least we got Winston Churchill right. But that actually is showing just ultimately how easy it is to fool, to make it difficult. The fact that we already got one wrong. In general, I think I went through it and got 8 out of 10. But what's notable is some AI creative photos are becoming the most popular answer on Google now because people are being so confused by them. The piece really leads in particular with a selfie of a main image now that comes up for Tank Man. Now, of course, this is meant to be originally a very famous photo that now is an AI selfie that's on there that must be proving totally misleading.
So the point is, it's a fantastic tool if you go purposely to create something. But if you see something in circulation on social media, it's about authenticating it, knowing that it's real, the story that you and I tell on this show every single week.
And ultimately, it's down to a company such as Google that thinks of itself as the AI prowess to be able to tackle the AI issues that are currently being borne out for its own platform with the technology. But, I mean, that was a fun way to end what is this edition of Bloomberg Technology.
Don't forget, and thank you for listening to the podcast wherever you're getting your podcasts. From New York City and San Francisco, this is Bloomberg Technology.